Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tito Jaya Mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, we first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavad and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed to practically nil, and thus loving service unto the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental hymns, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, the Lord's pastimes out of Vrindavan. Okay, text number 3. Please repeat. Samahuta Bijmaka Kanyaya Ye Samahuta Bijmaka Kanyaya Ye Sriya Savanena Buhu Sayai Sam Shriya Savarnena Bahu Sayai Sam Gandharva Vritya Visatam Swabhagam Gandharva Vritya Visatam Swabhagam Jare Padam Mutni Dadat Suparnaha Jare Padam Mutni Dadat Suparnaha Samahuta Bijmaka Kanyayaye Sriya Savarnena Bahu Sayai Sam Gandharva Vritya Misitam Swabhagam Jare Padam Mutni Dadat Suparnaha Samahuta Bijmaka Kanyayaye Sriya Savarnena Bahu Sayai Sam Gandharva Vritya Misitam Swabhagam Jare Padamut Jare Padamutni Dadat Suparnaha Samahuta Bijmaka Kanyayaye Striya Savarnena Bahu Sayai Sam Gandharva Vritya Misitam Swabhagam Jare Padamutni Dadat Suparnaha
Samahuta Bhishmaka Kanyayaye
Samahuta Bhishmaka Kanyayaye
Sriya Savarnena Bubusayasam
Sriya Savarnena Bahusayaisam
Gandharva Vritya Misatam Swabhagam
Gandharva Vritya Misatam Swabhagam
Jare Paramudina Dada Supanaha
Jare Padamurni Dat Suparnaha
Samahuta Bhishmaka Kanyayaye
Samahuta Bhishmaka Kanyayaye
Sriya Savarnena Babushayaisam
Sriya Savarnena Bhusayasam
Gandharva Vrittaya Ishatam Swabhagam
Gandharva Vritya Misatam Swabhagam
Jare Padamurtini Tadat Suparnaha
Jare Paramurni Dadat Suparnaha
Samahuta Bhishmaka Kanyayaye
Samahuta Bhishmaka Kanyayaye
Yasavarnena Bubushayaisha
Sriya Savarnena Bahusayasam
Gandharva Vritya Mishatam Swabhagam
Gandharva Vritya Misatam Swabhagam
Jare Paramurni Dadat Suparnaha
Jare Paramurni Dadat Saparnaha.
Anyone else? Hare Krishna. Our guest? Who
Yes,
are our
Prabhu.
guest?
Yes. Gaurav Prabhu and Kavita Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Welcome.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Okay, the word for word translation. Please repeat. Samahutaha.
Samahutaha.
Invited.
Invited.
Bhishmaka
Bhishmaka,
of King Bhishmaka.
the king Bhishmaka.
Kanyaya
Kanyaya,
by the daughter.
by the daughter.
Yea,
Yea,
all those.
all those.
Shriyaha,
Shriya,
fortune.
fortune.
Savarnena,
Savarnena,
by a similar sequence.
by a similar sequence.
Bahusaya,
Bahusaya,
expecting to be so.
expecting to be so.
A some
Is some
of them,
of them.
Gandharva,
Gandharva,
in marrying.
and marrying.
Vritya,
Vritya,
by such a custom.
by such a custom.
Misatam,
Misatam,
carrying so.
carrying so.
Swabhagam,
Swabhagam,
own share.
own share.
Jare,
Jare,
took away.
took away.
Padam,
Padam,
feet.
feet.
Morni,
Morni.
morni, on the head.
On the head.
Dadat,
The dot,
plates.
plates.
Suparnaha,
Supornaha,
Garuda.
Garuda.
Translation, please repeat. Attracted by the beauty and fortune. Please repeat.
Attracted by the beauty
And fortune of Rukmini,
Of Rukmini,
the daughter of King Bhishmaka.
the daughter of King Bhishmaka.
Many great princes and kings
Many great princes and kings
assembled to marry her.
assembled to marry her.
But Lord Krishna,
The Lord Krishna,
stepping over the ever hopeful candidates,
stepping over the ever-helpful candidates,
carried her away as his own share.
carried her away as his own share.
His Garuda carried away nectar.
As Garuda carried away nectar.
Attracted by the beauty and fortune of Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, many great princes and kings assembled to marry her. But Lord Krishna, stepping over the ever hopeful candidates, carried her away as his own share. His Garuda carried away nectar. Srila Prabhupada's Divine Purport. Princess Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, is attractive, is fortune itself, because she was as valuable as gold, both in color and in value. Since the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is the property of the Supreme Lord, Rukmini was actually meant for Lord Krishna. But Sisupal was selected as a bridegroom by Rukmini's elder brother. Although King Bhishmaka wanted his daughter to be married to Krishna, Rukmini, although King Bhishmaka wanted his daughter to be married to Krishna, Rukmini invited Krishna to take her away from the clutches of Sisupal. So when the bridegroom, Sisupal, came there with his party, with the desire to marry Rukmini, Krishna all of a sudden swept her from the scene, stepping over the heads of all the princes there, just as Garuda carried away nectar from the hands of the demons. This incident will be clearly explained in the 10th canto. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 3rd verse, 3rd chapter, in 3rd canto, 333 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who is opening our eyes with the torch of knowledge, although they were certainly shut by the darkness of ignorance. When will Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within the material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
So Rukmini is the goddess of fortune, herself, Lakshmi Devi, and Krishna is the supreme Vishnu. We know how Krishna appeared in the world to protect the devotees, to relieve the suffering and anxiety of Goddess Bhumi, Mother Earth. And to do so, he would have to chastise so many miscreants who were here for their own welfare, had really no ambition or desire to serve Guru and Krishna. Just the opposite. They were hiding incognito from the Devas, whom they often are in conflict with and fight many tremendous battles. So after one such war, the Asuras went into hiding on the planet Earth, taking many types of forms, great forms as wizards, powerful animals. They took birth in many royal families. So we had this assembly, which initially a great alliance was created by Krishna's uncle, who had usurped the kingdom from Ugrasen, part of the great Yadu dynasty. Many clans connected to all of it. I think Kamsa's part was the Bhoja clan. So he had usurped the kingdom from his father, actually put his father in prison. He didn't kill him, put him in prison. And he had created all these great alliances around the world. And one was with one powerful, very powerful Kshatriya, who is as powerful as the great and famous Bhimasen. And that was Jarasandha, born from the witch Jara. Oh, it's actually Jara who put him back together. I can't remember the exact king he was born from, but he was born deformed and simply left in the forest, and this witch Jara put him back together, and he became as powerful as 10,000 elephants and had become extremely powerful. But he was one of these demons, and he had taken he had become part of this alliance with Kamsa. He had actually married Kamsa's daughters, Kamsa's daughters, I think, were married to him. So when Krishna killed Kamsa, Kamsa had married Jarasandha's daughters. And so when Kamsa was killed, the daughters went back to their father, and so naturally the father became extremely inimical to Krishna, who had killed the husband of his daughters. And he had joined the alliance that was completely against Krishna. He had Sisupal, who was in previous births, Hiranyakashipu and Ravan, now had appeared as Sisupal, and he was a cousin of Krishna, but naturally inimical. That was his destiny. That was his nature. That was his the mode or the mood that he was being conducted by Providence to act that way. He was a powerful Vishnu Duta from the spiritual world who was forced to take this part in Krishna's pastimes. So Sisupal had other alliances, such as the great demon Salva, who would also fight with Krishna later in the 10th canto and cause many, many problems to the Yadu dynasty. So all these persons came together into one party to go marry Queen Rukmini, or Princess Rukmini. Somehow her elder brother was favorable to them and opposed to Krishna. She had 4 other brothers. They all bore basically the same name. There was Rukmini's brother what was Rukmini's brother's name? Rukmi.
Rukma.
But then the rest of them were Rukmarath, Rukmavis, Rukmavat, Rukma something else. They all had this Rukma and then some synonym attached to it. So that was her brothers, but this elder brother, he was opposed to Krishna and arranged for the marriage of his daughter to Krishna's, wasn't exactly Krishna's enemy, he's Krishna's cousin, but he hated Krishna so much, he was always blaspheming him and causing him problems. But Krishna, because he was part of the family, Krishna had promised his mother, he wouldn't take his offenses seriously. So this person continued on like that. But it so happened that her brother arranged his marriage with Princess Rukmini, who had never seen Krishna, but she had heard about Krishna in her father's court. Her father was a very good Kshatriya king. He wasn't one of those demons appearing in the world, but he was actually born of royal blood, and he was destined to be a good Kshatriya king on earth. And to the extent that his daughter was actually the goddess of fortune, Rukmini. So great sages and ever great personalities in the universe frequent the court of Bhishmaka. And she had heard about Krishna from them. And just hearing about Krishna's divine qualities and unlimited opulences, she had become attached to Krishna, and within her mind decided she would only marry Krishna. And her father approved of this idea, but the elder brother didn't, and somehow ever was able to arrange the marriage between Rukmini and Sisupal. So Rukmini, hearing about this, became very depressed. It's the last thing she wanted to do. But being the daughter of a king, being a princess, she was very familiar with diplomacy and the ways of action. And she decided, rather than being depressed over the matter and simply lamenting, that she had to do something, and she had to do something quick. So she wrote Krishna a letter, and she chose one pure Brahmana to deliver that message to Krishna. She had to be very careful doing this because it could be someone who was very favorable to her brother or even her father, and who would simply take the matter to one of them and ruin her plan. So she had to choose one Brahmin who would give a promise to deliver the message and then actually carry it out. Some Brahmin that she could trust his honesty after securing the promise, then he would actually carry it out, despite the results of that action. Maybe, when he returned, Rukmini's brother would be, very inimical to him and his family. So but she needed someone who would not be worried about those things and would deliver the message. So she found such a Brahmin, and that Brahmin left for Dwarka, and he entered Dwarka, being a pure Brahmin. Pure Brahmins could enter into Dwarka. It wasn't easy. There were many military camps, many gates one had to go through, and naturally it was like a security check in the sense that people would want to know who you are. But being a pure Brahmin, he was actually able to enter all the way to Krishna's personal palace and deliver the message. When Krishna saw this Brahmin coming, he was sitting on a golden throne and immediately got up and asked the Brahmin to sit down on the throne, showing the world how Brahmanas and his devotees should be treated. So the Brahmin was offered worship, and he was fed nicely. Then he was given a nice bed to rest upon. And Krishna personally came there and massaged his legs, and then began to speak to him, asking him what his mission is. So the Brahmin revealed that he was here on behalf of Princess Rukmini, the daughter of Bhishmaka. She had sent him a message, and he read that message. And the message explained how she had fallen in love with him and given her life to him and was only surrendered to him. But there's this dilemma that has come about. Despite her desire and her father's approval, her brother has arranged a marriage with Sisupa. And so she's begging Krishna, so if you approve of my idea, accept my surrender, and will accept me as your wife, then you have to do something immediately, because this marriage party is on their way, and they're going to marry me. Being the daughter of a princess, she could understand what was going to happen. She's telling Krishna to take her away. There are different types of marriage. The best type of marriage is when the parents arrange for the daughter's marriage. And that, was done by her elder brother. And, the bridegroom's party had come to a house, and they would see everybody, and the father would offer the daughter, his daughter, to the bridegroom in front of so many Brahmins and relatives and important people in the kingdom. So that's the best way of marriage. But there's other marriages, different types of marriages. And one of those types of marriages is called a Rakshasa marriage, where a person simply takes the girl.
Gandharva. Gandharva marriage.
Gandharva, but at least in Krishna book, it's called Rakshasa marriage. And Rakshasas do the same thing as the Gandharvas. They also have some approval to do that by providence. They're a race of mystical beings who don't always possess the best of character. There's some famous ones, like Ravan, of course, who made the world cry, but then his brother Vibhishan is a great devotee of Ram. Anyhow, in Krishna book, Prabhupada calls it Rakshasa marriage. I don't know if it was not edited right, but that's what it's called there. And maybe there are Gandharva as well as Rakshasa marriages, but certainly Rakshasas many times simply take their brides. So Krishna took up that form of marriage, and Princess Rukmini was asking him to take it up. But she also knew that if there would be fighting, because the bridegroom's party was there and they were all Kshatriyas, they're not going to be just peaceful personalities like Brahmins who would say something like maybe, oh, why did you invite us? And then, somebody else shows up and the princess wants to go with him. They would maybe be offended, but they're not going to become violent about the matter, Or they would simply agree with whatever the princess wanted. Oh, she wanted to marry him. No, the Kshatriya is going to be insulted, and he's going to retaliate, with his might. So there was going to be fighting, and there was certainly possibility of civilian casualties. And the princess didn't want to see that happen. Somebody could unnecessarily be killed in the course of the battle. So she suggested to Krishna how she could be kidnapped with the minimum loss of life. Her family, although Vaishnavas, simply for their material well-being, they maintain one temple of Durga Devi. And when the princess was to be married, she would visit Mother Durga and secure her blessings. So Queen Rukmini suggested that when I visit the temple of Durga, you can take me away before entering the temple or when I'm coming out of the temple. That would be a good time to do that. And it was actually very strategic. She entered the temple but still didn't see Krishna. At one point she was really worried that maybe Krishna decided against it. And this would become her destiny. But then she saw that Brahmin, and so she knew the Brahmin was back, and so she was, and maybe the Brahmin indicated, through body language, that Krishna had approved. But in any case, she goes to the temple and still no Krishna. Then she enters the temple and she takes Mother Durga's blessings, and she comes out of the temple, and suddenly Krishna appears. And I think in this text it says on Garuda, in the Krishna book, you see Krishna on a chariot. And all the princes, other princes, this Queen Rukmini is so beautiful. She has this name that means a beautiful, beautiful face that opens up like the whirl of the lotus. I forget the Sanskrit name, Ruchira, Nana, something like that. So they actually were having a hard time staying on their mounts, whether it had been elephants or horses or chariots. She was just so stunningly beautiful. It's not that in spiritual life or amongst the celestials, with to speak of those from the spiritual world, that they don't possess opulence, but they possess opulence far beyond this world. So the beauty of Rukmini was completely unworldly. There was no princess on earth who could compare to her. She was just exquisitely beautiful. And these lusty princes who were worldly men, they were, as I had said, they were powerful demons that had appeared on earth. And their whole reason of living is to possess the material universe, whether they be. They wanted to possess the things on earth. So naturally they wanted to possess the most beautiful and qualified women. But she was so beautiful, they were actually entranced. They were entranced by the way she moved, the way she walked, everything about her. So they were not prepared for battle at all. They were completely smitten by love. And at that time, Krishna appears, and he simply takes Rukmini and she steps onto his chariot, and they simply drive away. And then the Kshatriyas are witnessing this. You have to understand that Krishna, was put into hiding in the village and grew up among cowherd people. He was still to this day is known as Gopal and Govinda. He came back, and although he had performed all these wonderful activities of killing all these wizards and demons, and had personally killed Kamsa himself, as well as the arrangements Kamsa had made to kill him, he had defeated all of them. Still, the people doubted him. These asuras doubted him. They simply found fault in him. And then when Krishna defeated Jarasandha, who attacked Krishna for killing the husband of his daughters, he attacked Krishna 17 times, but Krishna would release him each time after defeating many, many, many Aksahini divisions with just a small amount of troops and his brother Balaram. They would defeat them all. On the 18th time, Mathura is attacked not only by Jarasandha, but also by one powerful Malecha king, Kalyavana. And Krishna didn't want to fight with Kalyavana. Kalyavana attacked first. So he led Kalyavana away, and Kalyavana was killed by the powerful Muchakunda, a very powerful Kshatriya from another age, who had assisted the Devas and was given the benediction to sleep within a cave for as long as he could rest. And if anybody disturbed him, he would burn them to ashes. So Krishna arranged that this Kalyavana would disturb Muchakunda and be burned to ashes. But then he goes back with his brother Balaram, and they slaughter all these troops of that Malecha army. But now Jarasandha is going to attack, and Krishna decides this is too much for the people of Mathura to bear, and he becomes the famous Rancha Krishna, and he plays the role of a coward, and he simply flees. Him and Balaram flee, and Jarasandha is chasing them with 23 Aksahini divisions. There's so many troops and cavalry and elephant troops and troops on foot. It's a huge number in each Aksahini division. 23 is more than the amount that appeared on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. There were, 7 Aksahini divisions assisting Yudhisthira and 11 assisting Dronacharya. Dronacharya, but Duryodhana. So 18 altogether. But here Jarasandha has 23 Aksahini divisions in this final 18th attack upon Mathura. And he's chasing Krishna, but he can't catch him. And eventually Krishna ascended a mountain, and Jarasandha couldn't find him, so he sets the mountain on fire, and Krishna and Balaram leap off, and they get away, and Jarasandha thinks that Krishna has been killed. He thinks Krishna has been killed and he's victorious. So he goes back, and he doesn't even bother to loot Mathura. He's got sufficient wealth himself. He doesn't bother to kill any more people. He's happy. He's so joyous. He thinks he finally defeated Krishna. So he goes home. And now he has come and joined Sisupal's marriage party. And all of a sudden, Krishna showed up and took Rukmini away right in front of him. And right in front of Sisupal. Sisupal hated Krishna from the time he was born, even though Krishna had mercy on him from the time he was born. He was also born very deformed. And it was only by Krishna's touch that he looked proper. But still, he hated Krishna, because that was his role to play. That was his destiny. So all these Kshatriyas, they see this going on. They get their wits, and they start to attack Krishna. Krishna, of course, Princess Rukmini's on the chariot. He fights with them. He defeats them. I believe Balaram shows up and takes over, and Krishna just leaves, but her brother follows, and he's cursing at Krishna. Stop, you coward. Stop and fight like a man. Fight. You can't take the princess without fighting with me. So Krishna stops and does fight with him and decides, he was ready to kill him, but the princess begged for her brother's life, and so Krishna just shamed him by cutting off his beautiful hair. All these Kshatriyas have this beautiful hair, they have all these people serving them, so their hair is always looks like, the mane of a lion, but without all the being matted and having fleas in it and all that stuff, just perfectly beautiful hair. So, Krishna cuts it all off in different ways, and when Balaram shows up and chastises him for doing this, he says he's part of the family, he shouldn't have done that now. So anyway, but Rukmi, he's very upset, and he doesn't even go home. He won't even go back home. He goes off and just goes to some village like that and starts to live his life, the rest of his life, in this type of shame. And of course Krishna returns with the goddess Rukmini. Rukmini becomes his first queen out of the 16,000, I think 108 or 16,008 princesses. 8 of them are described in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, like Kalindi, and the goddess Yamuna, and Mitravendra, and of course Satyabhama, and Jambavati, Satyabhama. All of these different princesses Krishna marries, and the 16,000 princesses are, we talked about that the last class I gave when Krishna killed his son Bhaumasura. He liberated these princesses who now could only go home and nobody would marry them, so they all took shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. He obliged them all, and he gave them all their own palace. He gave them all many, 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 many sons, not including the daughters. Each had no less than 10 sons. I can't remember how many, but they each had a lot of sons. So Krishna had all these princesses that he had married. They were all his queens now. So this is only can be accomplished by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada says we should hear about these pastimes. We should hear about the pastimes of Krishna killing the demons and defeating all the asuras that had appeared on the earth and were causing a great disturbance. He said, but there's some class of people, he particularly names them. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the great spiritual master and father of Prabhupada's spiritual master, he delineated approximately 8 to 11 sects that had fractioned off of Lord Chaitanya's movement and devised their own conclusions. And one is commonly called, in Prabhupada's books, Prakrita Sahajiyas, originally given that term by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, meaning that they take things cheaply and they like to only listen to the pastimes of the rasa dance. And they think that these other pastimes are not so important. Prabhupada makes the point they are all absolute and transcendental, and they can all purify the heart. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes how by hearing about Krishna killing certain demons, then certain demoniac qualities within our own heart become purified. Because we're all born in the Kali Yuga, and we come under the influence of different dark modes of nature, different demoniac qualities. And it's very difficult to purge ourselves from these influences. But by hearing about Krishna, just as Krishna personally killed the demoniac Kshatriyas and different asuras and powerful wizards that attacked him, and similarly within our heart, the sound vibration of these pastimes will destroy those demons and purify our heart. This is the great benediction of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement and Srila Prabhupada's taking that movement around the world. Previously, it was not possible for people to hear these pastimes. It was Srila Prabhupada who took these pastimes out of the Sanskrit language and put them into the common languages spoken by people in the world. It's not that the pastime becomes less potent. If we chant, there are many times that even a parrot learns to chant Sanskrit verses. But it's not that the parrot can become a teacher or can, certainly there's some fortune there. But we shouldn't become just like parrots who can't comprehend what they chant. So Srila Prabhupada put an emphasis on learning the philosophy and not just chanting mantras without understanding them. Consequently, in ISKCON, even if one can't chant the Sanskrit, they can worship the deity by chanting the mantra in their native language. Although everyone has that opportunity to chant the Sanskrit, and Srila Prabhupada specifically Romanized it or put it into the type of alphabet and letters that people are familiar with so that they wouldn't have to go all the way back to the beginning and learn the symbols and the sounds for the Sanskrit alphabet before they could do anything. No, they could immediately learn the philosophy in their own language, and they could learn how to basically pronounce the Sanskrit mantra through seeing it in forms of letters that they knew the sounds for. And that would be very potent. It's purifying just to chant it. At least Srila Prabhupada said we could learn the 32 syllables or the 3 words of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But then one could go on and learn so many other mantras, like the Nrsimhadev mantra, so many mantras, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. So many devotees, they memorized the whole Bhagavad Gita. And in India, that's the good fortune that they have, because Sanskrit there is like Latin in the West. Anyone who goes to law school or medical school, they have to learn Latin because all the terms are in Latin. And since the academic community is connected all over the world, even doctors in India have to learn Latin terms. Maybe they don't have to learn the same law terms. They have law. In modern day India comes a lot from British law. And so a lot of those Latin terms are there. And Prabhupada even uses many of them in his books, like summum bonum of the absolute truth. Is a Latin term, meaning, the absolute of something, the summum bonum. So many Latin terms Prabhupada uses. So Sanskrit is the ancient language that describes so many philosophical systems and so much theology that is there in the ancient Vedic culture that has come down all the way to today. And even today, there's so many Sanskrit schools, and many times devotees graduate from them and they come to the West and they can't get a job because their their masters at least, maybe even PhD is in Sanskrit, and unless you get a job teaching it, there's nothing you can do. The same thing happens to the Muslims. They all go to these religious schools and they learn all about the Quran and how to chant the Quran. But so many of them are doing it, when they come out, there's no job opportunity. Because there's only so many mullahs and people who can teach the Quran. And so there was one gentleman that I had read some article he had read. He said, so therefore many of them end up being influenced by politics. And they end up, joining people like that guy Osama bin Laden and his group of people. There was nothing for them to do when they got out of school. They already had so many people doing that they couldn't make a living doing that. And not all of them were from rich countries like Saudi Arabia that just gave you welfare anyway. You could just get on, the king would pay for you just to live. But young men, they have passion, just to take your welfare check, and how long can you just ride around in a fancy car? And there's so many rules and regulations, so many of them ended up joining different political groups. So the important thing is to hear Krishna's pastimes and become Krishna's devotee, and to free our heart from contamination, and then to do as much as we possibly can to remember Krishna. And depending on what we do in life, if one gets married, then naturally they can't remain, generally speaking, in the spiritual master's ashram like a single person can. They have to have some employment, some dharma that they should have been trained for. So then they take up their dharma, which is the natural varnashram way of life. But they learn to do that for Krishna, just as Krishna is playing as a Kshatriya prince, and he's defeating all the challenges. Which, if you can't do that, then how can you succeed? If Biden can't defeat the challenges of Trump, how can he succeed in establishing a government? That's the job of a Kshatriya. They have to be able to maintain a government and an army. So everybody has their dharma to execute and perform, but we have to learn to do that in Krishna consciousness. Just as Krishna showed, just as Lord Chaitanya showed us how to do it. So it's actually exactly at our time to stop, 10 after 8. So we're going to stop here. And if there's a quick comment or question, we can take that. But it's time to move on to the Lord's prasadam. And maybe Mataji, if you want to go see the cow now, I think they're going to go down and see the cow. You better go quickly though, because the cow herd ladies that were milking, they may be gone by now.
We'll go
Srila Prabhupada